Hi fans of high quality entertainment. My cat Jinx is sleeping, so I'm going to whisper. I'm just joking. She's always sleeping. Today I'm going to talk about Genesis. I'm making sure I'm recording, that's why I'm looking over here. So embarrassing to ramble on for 20 minutes and then you didn't record it. Anyway, a couple of days ago in my community on my front page, I posted a poll with a yes or no. And the question was, or the statement was, Genesis is one of the greatest rock bands of all time. And you could either choose yes or no and leave a comment. And I had over 500 votes. 60% of you said no, and 40% said yes. So almost half and half. A couple of comments here. I have to say mostly because of Peter Gabriel. I love him in Genesis and I love his solo work. Yes, Peter Gabriel era. Definitely yes, made some great albums. Definitely yes, they are the greatest band of all time. I really like a few of their songs, but in terms of prog rock bands, I like bands like Yes and King Crimson more. Yes, but only until 1977. They are good but not great. That's just my opinion. You can't have an opinion. So, but I am with the 40% who think Genesis is one of the greatest bands of all time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hopefully quickly talk about each of the albums that I've heard. And I would like to talk about this guy, Phil Collins. Now, in the 80s, he was like a mega superstar. And I bet quite a few of his fans back in the day didn't even realize he was originally just a drummer, and a damn good one. And of course he did sing on sometimes on the early Genesis albums, and great voice. But he is so underrated as a drummer. His work in Genesis is just jaw-dropping good. And even when Peter Gabriel left, and I love Peter Gabriel's voice in Genesis especially, but when Peter Gabriel left and Phil Collins took over, winning, I mean, the first few albums with Phil Collins on vocals, I thought they were just outstanding. And so I think Phil Collins, I don't know, he's had a lot of hate through the years, I think, from the more serious rock fans. I remember a friend of mine years ago when Phil Collins took over, and after a few albums, maybe it was around the time of Duke, and I guess him and his friends were really into the progressive rock stuff. They took all of the Genesis albums, maybe the ones just with Phil Collins, and they did a ceremony where they burned all the Genesis albums. It's kind of funny and sad at the same time. So, of course, I didn't hear their debut album until the late 70s, From Genesis to Revelation. And it's pretty good. I need to hear it again. I haven't heard it in about 5, 6, 7 years, but I would definitely buy that on CD. It was good. Their second album, Trespass. I always get confused with if Phil Collins was on this one. I don't think he was. No, the drummer is John Mayhew, with Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, Peter Gabriel, of course, and Anthony Phillips on guitar. This is a really good album. I used to only love the knife on this, but in time I've grown to actually appreciate the whole album. It's not my favorite, but it's a very good album. Then, of course, the classic. This is the first album of theirs I ever heard. And it was probably in 1972 that I heard it. And loved it right away. The Musical Box. What a epic, classic, progressive rock song. But the whole album, Return of the Giant Hogweed, Seven Stones, Harold the Barrel, everything. I think it's an excellent album. Someday I'll rank them. Genesis Foxtrot, one of the greats. Probably my favorite of their studio albums. Watcher of the Skies, Timetable, Get 'Em Out by Friday, Can Utility and the Coastliners, and of course, Supper's Friggin' Ready. That's what I call the song, Supper's Friggin' Ready. One of the greatest epic songs of all time. Then, Selling England by the Pound. And I never totally loved this album for years and years and years. Until the last couple of years, I've finally appreciated it completely, and it's a great album. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, a double album. And I think it's great, but that being said, I still need to take the time to really listen to the whole thing, because after the first side and maybe Carpet Crawlers, which is my favorite song on the album, but the first side I absolutely love, and then I just get bored listening to sides 2, 3, and 4, but I need to listen to it more, for sure, and give it a chance, because I'm sure I will love it. I will love it. Peter Gabriel actually, you know, kind of ugly there back in the 70s, though. I don't know what he was eating. And then, of course, Peter Gabriel left the band, and he had a mighty successful solo career. It would suck though, I'm not a huge fan of his solo career. I love some of his early albums, but he's one of a few artists that they take forever to make a new studio album. I think his last one was quite a few years ago, and they were just like cover versions, I believe. But anyway, his debut album I absolutely loved. This one, it's called Scratch. All of these were self-titled, but this one is called Scratch. I was disappointed in it. And then this one, his third album, Melt, I think is kind of what they call it, or Melting. His Face is Melting, is excellent. And after that, I never, Don't Give Up is one of the greatest songs of all time with Kate Bush. It's excellent. But back to Genesis. So, Phil Collins took over on lead vocals, still played drums too sometimes, and around this time Chester Thompson from Frank Zappa's band and Weather Report came into the band, and they released A Trick of the Tail. I just listened to this for the first time in probably 5 years on Spotify. Oh my God, it is good. Excellent, excellent. And I saw them on that tour in Ottawa with my brother and sister, and it was great. Phil Collins' first tour on lead vocals. Wind and Wuthering. I remember buying this and I just found it boring, and I never I just kind of gave up on it kind of quickly. Listened to it 2 or 3 times and gave up on it. But I've heard it recently, and I think I'm going to love it. It's great. A very underrated album, I think, Genesis. And then there were 3. That's when Steve Hackett left, and it was just the 3 of them. And once again, well, when I bought this, I really enjoyed it. And I thought a lot of the songs were catchy, and of course they had their first big hit with Follow You, Follow Me. Try saying that 3 times in a row. And but I need to listen to this again and get right back into it. But I will say, the one song I always remember is the very first one, Down and Out, which I think is one of their most underrated songs. Oh my God, it is so good. It is so good. This is when they started to really go to, I was going to say too commercial, but they started going commercial. Duke by Genesis. And I enjoyed it for the most part, and Turn It On Again. That is, I know it's overplayed on the radio, but still, Phil Collins' vocals and the energy of the track, I think it's great. Misunderstanding, it's a great commercial pop song. And then Duke's Travels, Duke's End, instrumentals, great. So this was a good album. And I believe this is the final album that I bought of theirs, Abacab, which I thought was good. And one of my all-time favorite Genesis songs, and one of my all-time favorite songs is on this album. Can you guess what it is? That's right, Keep It Dark. Oh my God, the riff in that song, if you haven't heard Keep It Dark, you should. It's this guitar combined with a keyboard, I think, riff, and doom, 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 doom. I love it. And Phil Collins' vocals. I need to calm down and getting really excited here. It's just a song. And Abacab, they were still being sort of, they're of course being more commercial, but they still did their progressive rock kind of things like Abacab, and maybe that's the only one on here. I believe Who Done It was a really annoying song. I've got to listen to this album again. It's been a while. I actually have that on CD. But for me, the standout cut on that is Keep It Dark. And then I never got into Phil Collins' solo career. Of course, In the Air Tonight is absolutely a classic, but it's way, way too overplayed on the radio. But it's not the song's fault, is it? And some people would say, well, he sold out, or Genesis sold out, but I don't really believe that's the case. I believe somebody like Phil Collins, he was being honest. He loves, like the Supremes' You Can't Hurry Love. He loved that as a kid, and he thought he would remake it, and it became a big hit. And he likes pop music, so he was doing some commercial songs. And then I never bought this album, although I will say, it's just called Genesis, I will say Mama is such a friggin' awesome song, and one of Phil Collins' best vocals. He is such an underrated singer. I mean, between Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins, I'd have to go with Peter Gabriel, but Phil Collins, damn good drummer, damn good singer. Respect for Phil Collins, even with all his stupid radio hits. But Illegal Alien, that was a pretty big hit. That's All, of course, but I'd need to listen to this again. But that was the last one that I kind of remember. And then Invisible Touch, that's when they completely lost me, and I found that song a bit annoying. And Land of Confusion, that was pretty good. And then We Can't Dance, the final album with Phil Collins. I know the song We Can't Dance, and it's alright. There's Phil's solo career, doing what he loves to do, and making big hit singles. And the final Genesis album with Ray Wilson on vocals. Phil Collins had left. I've never heard this. I've heard it's not a very good album. I might have played it for a few minutes on Spotify, but it's like, I had no interest in it. But I'm sure there are fans of even this album. And of course, one other thing I want to mention is their live albums were awesome. Seconds Out with Phil Collins on vocals doing the whole Supper's Ready. He did a superb job on that. I've mentioned before Steve Hackett, one of the most underrated guitarists in rock music. And Genesis Live, their first live album from 1973. It's, of all of their albums, it's my favorite, although it's a live album. And the live version of The Knife on that is one of my all-time favorite live tracks. So that's it. I hope I rambled on enough. This is an excellent book put out by, I think it's Mojo magazine. No, sorry, from the makers of Uncut. So I would love your thoughts on the whole career of Genesis. And I think we all need to give Phil Collins a bit more respect. Like, he was a mega superstar and we got tired of him in the 80s. I think he got tired of it too. And, but he's just one of the best, as is all of the Genesis members. All of them superb, talented musicians. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.